Welcome to Hey Therapist. I'm your host, Leslie Ross. With me is my producer, Jay Wesley Lindley. Let's get mental. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hey Therapist. We're on episode something. I don't know where we are. We're getting there. 4th of July. I'm actually recording this before the 4th because I'm on call the weekend after, but 4th of July is coming up. Can't wait for that. I love fireworks. Fireworks make me so happy. So we're going to celebrate, see some fireworks, and we're going to do that, have a day off work, but then, back to work on Friday because I work for the state. We only get one day off, which is fine. Fireworks, and going to enjoy that, enjoy the weekend. Today's episode, I want to talk about emotional maturity. I think it's one of those things that, sometimes people just aren't emotionally mature. Growing older is not an option. We're all going to get older. If, the Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we all get older. Growing up emotionally, that's kind of a choice. And for some people, they don't decide to do that, or they don't want to do the work, or they don't even recognize they need to do the work. And so I want to talk about some signs and some ways that we can work on our emotional maturity. I think we've all had some instances happen where we've been around someone who is a grown-ass person who says something or does something or has behaviors that you're just like, oh, wow, okay. So how do I handle that in a mature way? Because this person is insecure or childlike or whatever it is that led them to do or say something that they probably shouldn't do or say, especially when it's someone that doesn't know you. And they make a comment that you're just like, the fuck? Like, you just said that out loud? Like, you don't know me. You don't know how I'm going to react. Luckily, I am not a reactive person. And so I can control my words and my mouth, even though I don't always want to. I had it happen on the last trip. Like I said in the last episode, just got back from a trip to Cuba, and I had a female make a comment about me that was unkind, and she said it with her whole chest. She made a comment about me that was unkind and unnecessary, especially since she didn't know me or my life. Like, you don't know my life. Why are you making comments? And I could have handled it in many, many ways. I chose to just say something witty in response. The people around me were, I think, the ones that had gotten to know me over the trip were concerned because they knew how I was. The person I was traveling with knew how I was. I think he was concerned about what I was going to say. I handled it in the best way possible. I just said cheers to that and just kept it moving, not letting you affect me because you're insecure or you are threatened by me or you don't like my personality, whatever it is. I don't know why she said what she said, but she did. And I'm not going to give the dignity of a response because I'm not overly reactive. And that's one of the first signs that someone is kind of emotionally immature, is they have this overly reactivity. We are all reactive. It's a trait that everyone carries. We react. It's what keeps us safe. It's what keeps us calm and all those things. Like, you react to everything. It's a trait all humans have. We have reactivity. However, someone who is emotionally immature responds to small issues, those small inconveniences, changes, arguments, extreme emotions, whatever it is, with high reactivity, which leads to outbursts, tantrums, crying, manipulation, whatever it is. They're just overly reactive. It's those people that you're like, wait, what? This doesn't, like, I'm not seeing a connection here. Like, I don't understand how this is the response I'm getting. And we see it a lot in relationships where, you may calmly say, hey, I don't like it when you say that. I don't like it when you do that. I don't, it doesn't make me feel great. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're always on me, or you're always saying bad things, or I can't do anything right. Da, 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 da. Make it very, very manipulative. That's someone who is emotionally immature. An emotionally mature person is going to say, okay, well, I apologize if that's the way it came across. It may not be how I meant it, or if they meant it in a certain way, but maybe you took it wrong. They take a moment to respect your emotions, to reflect, and to respond rather than to react. And that's what you kind of have to do when you're working on your emotional maturity, or if, you are someone who is already emotionally mature, you reflect and then you respond. You don't react. And it's really important to respond instead of reacting, because in a response, that means you've taken a moment, you've thought about it, you've listened to what they've had to say, or you've examined whatever experience you're having, whatever situation you are in. You've looked around and you've said, okay, this is this reaction. If you are having these big reactions when something is happening and you feel childlike, or you feel like it's an out of body, like I don't know who that was, then it may be a past trauma that you're reacting to. When we talk about reactivity and all of those things, you go back and listen to a few episodes, but in the reaction, in the PTSD model, in the trauma model, in just emotional models, when something happens to us or when we're around something, we internalize it. We have a thought about it. We have a feeling about it. We have an emotion about it. And our body locks that in. It's locked in. Okay, this is how we respond to this moment. And a lot of times we form that when we are children. If you are an adult and someone hurts your feelings, or someone says something, or you get scared, or you get emotional and you feel childlike, you feel like you're out of control, you feel like it's not a proper response, it's probably not. It's probably something from your past that you may want to deal with. You may want to sit down and look at and understand why you're having those responses to it. So, if you catch yourself being overreactive to things, take a beat, be mindful, be present, understand what's going on, and then respond. And if you feel like you can't respond in the proper way, then somehow you need to express that to whoever you are talking to whatever situation you're in, and say, you know what? Right now, I don't feel like I can handle this very well. I need to take a moment so I can think about this. So you can be very mindful and be present in what's happening and what's going on. Another sign that someone is emotionally immature is they have difficulty in accepting responsibility. So whenever something goes on or goes wrong in life, or they get called on something, and this is something that I've experienced very recently, unfortunately, is, if you get called out on something and you continue to lie, or you're not taking full responsibility for your actions, you're putting it off on someone else and saying, well, they were doing this and I just was it. No, take responsibility for your actions. No deflection, no pointing fingers. You need to take responsibility for your actions. Other people may have played a role in whatever it was that went on, and you can't be responsible for them. And you don't have to be, but you do need to be responsible for yourself. You need to take responsibility for your actions, and that's really, really hard sometimes. It's hard to apologize. It's hard to be accountable, and it's hard to take responsibility, especially when you know you were in the wrong and when you know that your actions have hurt someone. But it hurts someone even more when you lie about it, when you're not fully honest, when you get called on it and you deflect, or you try to change the subject, or again, just not telling the full truth. Most of the time, and I used to say this to the kids, when they were little, is if we're asking you a question, we already know the answer. And a lot of times that's the way it is in life, and adult life, and relationships and friendships. If I'm asking you a question, I already know the answer. I've seen the receipts. I know what went on. It's your opportunity to be honest at this point and come clean, or you're digging yourself a deeper hole. And a lot of times people just keep digging the hole because they think they can manipulate their way out of a sticky situation or deflect or point fingers or, hey, look over there. It may not be the case, though. You may not be able to weasel your way out of the situation. And even if you have weaseled your way out and this other person still has questions and still wants answers, you have to take responsibility for that. You need to take ownership. You need to take the accountability and you need to accept that responsibility in your actions. And sometimes it sucks. And apologizing sucks. But when you're wrong, be wrong. Own it. Apologize for it. And you'll most likely gain more respect and more trust from the other person in the long run because they know when you're wrong, you will accept it. And sometimes it has to be a true heartfelt apology and you have to own it and say why you own it so that person understands why you're sorry. Sometimes you can get away with a simple, oh shit, my bad. Like if I overreacted and I had a moment where I did something or I hurt you, like, oh, my bad. Like I really didn't mean to do that. And that can be said in a non-disrespectful way and where you are being accountable and you're not trying to play off something and you're not discounting someone's reaction to it. But you can say, oh, my bad. And depending on the relationship, the friendship, the workplace, I don't know where this is happening, but that may be enough for the other person to be like, yeah, you right. You're bad. And you just move on and you just keep it moving and nothing really changes. Everyone is good. And that leads into the next point that I want to make about emotional immaturity is if an emotionally immature person will avoid difficult conversations. So they may avoid that apology. Sometimes the conversations, though, can be super awkward and really challenging on how to have that conversation. If you are struggling to have a difficult conversation, maybe you can pull it off in a text. Maybe. I don't recommend it. But sometimes if you preface with, listen, this is a really hard conversation and I want to send you a text so that you have time to think about it before you respond. And then we can have a face-to-face conversation. But you may also just need to write it out so you can kind of read it to them. You can have what you want to say and what you get across, because when we get in those difficult conversations and we see that it may be affecting someone, it may be hurting their feelings, it may be making them realize something they didn't know or coming clean or whatever it is, it can get real hard because you see that you're hurting someone and you don't want to hurt someone. So make yourself bullet points, make yourself a little something to read if you need to. It doesn't make it any less genuine, but that way the person knows that you genuinely want to get across what you're getting across. It could be you're dating someone and you're just not clicking, but they're great, but you just don't want to end it, but you want to end it. And there's really no reason other than the fact they don't give you the tingles. You need to have those conversations because you also don't want to lead someone on. And they may have genuine feelings for you. And you know that, which is why you don't want to have the conversation because you know it's going to hurt their feelings. But now you're just in this cycle where you're not being genuine and ultimately it's not fair to them and you're not being honest about what's going on. So you want to have that conversation. You want to just embrace the suck and go in and have the conversation. And the more you know that the conversation has to be had or you've had the conversation, the easier they get. Because if you do care about someone and you do have like feelings for them, even if it's just friendship or respect, having that difficult conversation can be easier because you know it's the right thing to do for them. It may suck for you, but ultimately it is the right thing to do for them. And it may suck for them. It may hurt their feelings. It may disappoint them. But having that conversation is going to garner you more respect and more appreciation than if you let it ride out or you just ghost somebody or you don't tell the truth or you hide something for a long time and then they find out. Like, that's the worst feeling in the world. So just know that really having the hard conversation now is going to save both of you stress and heartache or disappointment or whatever it is in the long run. Another sign of that emotional immaturity is the dependence on external validation. We all like validation. We all want reassurance. We all like kudos, unless you're like truly a narcissist, then you don't care. But they still need all of that. That's all they want is external validation. It's a sure sign of narcissism when all you need is external validation because you think you're the best thing in the world and you need other people to think you're the best thing in the world. But for normal, whatever that means, for us people out there in the world, we do like validation. We like a good job. We like a high five. We like a let's go champ. We like whatever it is. We all enjoy those kudos. And be that from friends, family members, workplace, whatever it is. However, if you have no internal dialogue that says, you know what, it would be nice to have that. And also, I know I'm great. I know I'm a catch. I know I'm doing a good job. I know that I'm a valuable person. I know that I'm a good friend. Whatever it is that you're struggling with and you're looking for that validation for, then let's work on that. Let's work on that self-esteem, that self-worth, that self-respect, so that when things happen to you, around you, you're not getting the validation you want, you're not getting these things, that you know it really is more of an external issue than an internal issue. Maybe it is the people that are around you. Maybe it is your workplace. Maybe it is these other things. Like you may work in a place where you enjoy what you do, but you're never going to get any recognition. You're never going to have the kudos. No one's ever going to stop by and say, good job. And that's really, really shitty. And I am so sorry that there are workplaces like that. But you know you're doing a good job. And you know that maybe your clients or your customers or the people you're building the homes for, you know, whatever it is. I was talking to one of the guys on the trip who does construction, and he says, you know, I don't get a lot. I don't do a lot of things personally with the people, but I know at the end of the day, I'm building a house for a family that's going to love it, and they're going to appreciate that, and they're going to be happy in that home, and that makes me feel good. So I have to deal with all of this other stuff, but that makes me feel good. So sometimes, you know, you don't get to see or reap the benefits or feel the rewards, but you know that you've done a good job and you know that that feels good. But if you needed that from outsiders all the time to be happy, to do the things, then that's where we get into problems of being in possibly abusive relationships. You know, some people seek out those people that need that, and that's how they become abusive. It's how people end up in cults, is because these cults make them feel so good about themselves or what they're doing, and that manipulation, and you're part of something, and look at these people that love you and support you as long as you do exactly what we say, and as long as you keep your whatever it is, and you do what I say, and you do how we say it, and you stay within the group, and you don't talk about it. Well, like usually if you're getting that validation and you need that validation from somewhere else, there's always strings attached. Whereas if you can build that self-worth just a little bit to where you're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. I know that I'm worth more than this. I don't know that I'm worth a lot. Sometimes we're not to the point where we know we have a lot of value, but I know it's got to be better than this. And that's how you build up that self-worth, build up that self-esteem. You don't have to deal with someone being abusive or a workplace being abusive or friends being abusive or shitty friends, toxic friends, whatever it is, who make you feel bad about yourself, but they're all you have. And they include you, so that feels good. Even though sometimes they're mean to you and pick on you, like you take that trade because you so want that connection and you want that validation, but you're really not getting it. And there are people out there that are valuable for you and will see the value in you. Sometimes you have to step out of the box that you've put yourself in and not be a people pleaser, because that's what a lot of this, depending on external validation, comes from. Like you see a lot of people who are people pleasers who have no self-worth, so they only need to do it to make someone else happy. And that's just not great. It can lead to you losing your own values. It can lead to you doing things that you don't want to do or just don't feel good in your spirit but you need this other stuff. So let's work on that self-esteem. Let's work on building up our self-worth. And it goes to what makes you happy. How do you make other people happy? What is your value? Because everyone has value. No matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've said, no matter what your past has been, no matter where you come from, you have value and you can put value into the world. You just have to step out of that lens, take off those glasses that only see the negative or only see where you've been or what you did or what your past was. Your past is not your story. Your past is not your future. Your past is just things that have happened to you or what you've overcome or where you've come from. And maybe you have done some terrible things, but that doesn't make it who you are. And that doesn't mean that that's what you're going to be, is a terrible person. Well, I'm a terrible person because I've done these terrible things. No, you did terrible things. Be a better person. You have a choice. You always have that choice. And sometimes in that, external validation, it also leads to someone who has difficulty setting boundaries. And that's one of those signs as well that you just don't have the maturity, because if you know who you are and you know your worth and you know what your value is, you won't have that inability to say no, because no is a complete sentence. When we may not have the maturity, then we have a hard time setting boundaries, and we need to be able to set those boundaries. We need to be able to say no. And sometimes no can create some friction or some hurt feelings. It can set up some walls. But if you're telling someone no to something that violates your boundaries, your needs, your wants, what you believe is right or wrong, then if that person gets bothered by that, then they may not be someone that you need to worry about if they're bothered by that. You get to set up your own boundaries and you get to set up your own values. And you can be respectful to others. You can validate their wants and needs without sacrificing your own values. And that's what good boundaries are for. Boundaries are so important in life, in keeping things good for you and keeping that balance. Work on setting those boundaries. And it's hard because with people that we haven't set boundaries with before, they will try to knock the wall down. No matter how strong you build the wall, they're going to try to force their way through. But once they realize that it's an actual boundary line, they'll stop. And that may mean they cut themselves out of your life. That may mean they stop. But maybe that's because they were taking advantage of you. And now that you've set a boundary, they don't take advantage of you. And you may miss that person because maybe they did have some other qualities that you enjoyed in some time or whatever it is. But if you're setting boundaries and that's pushing people away and your boundaries are reasonable, they're not people you need in your life anyway. You can find people who will respect your boundaries, but you have to respect your boundaries. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes when we don't have that level of maturity. Those who aren't emotionally mature also tend to struggle with empathy or feeling other people's feelings, understanding their feelings, empathizing with others, all of those things. It can really be hard when you're not mature to not be selfish. You get a lot of selfishness with the immaturity emotionally because they want what they want when they want it. And when they don't get it, they may throw a fit or they may do something or they may say something mean or they may whatever it is that shows that they don't care about other people. They just care about themselves and they care about what their emotions are and they care about all of those things. It's a really different situation for someone who is emotionally mature, for someone to say, you know what, I don't like that. I don't feel that. I need that. And another emotionally mature person to say, you know what, I got you. Whatever I can do to help. But this is all I can do. This is all I can offer you. And that other person will be like, okay, done. That makes sense. Let's do that. We also run into an issue with impulsivity when we are not mature, emotionally or mentally mature. We run into a lot of impulsivity. And sometimes impulsivity is a wonderful thing. I have done some very impulsive things that have led to some really great situations and some situations that I don't know how they're going to turn out, but in the moment it seemed like a good idea and we'll see how it turns out. And sometimes there's been things that I've done in the moment. It seemed like a good idea that I'm like, ooh, that was a terrible idea. So sometimes it can lead to unexpected happiness. But I said all that to say, if you are just impulsively living life and you're just YOLOing and you're not being mindful of how it's going to ultimately affect your life, how it could ultimately affect the life of others around you, those you care about, then we need to work on being mindful, being present, and thinking it all the way through. And we're not thinking worst case scenarios. We're not going down haunted forest trails. We are what ifing. We've discussed this before. We're what ifing on both sides. What if it goes wrong? Then XYZ. What if it doesn't turn out this way? Then XYZ is going to happen. That's not going to be great. If it goes right, though, what if something good comes from this? How is it going to affect people in my life? What if this person is involved? What if that person is involved? How is it going to affect them? That's when we look at the maturity side of it. We're looking at all of the things that could happen. We're looking at all of the outcomes that we know. We don't always know the outcomes. And sometimes we think it through and then it takes a hard left and we're like, how did we get here? But if you spend your life with I don't know how this happened. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how this happened. In just about every situation, work, life, family, friends, I don't know how this happened. Maybe you should backtrack. How did that happen? Like, let's look at your decision tree. Let's see where things went wrong or where you just said, yeah, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. Let's see what happens. Well, that could be a problem if that's how you're living life all of the time. If you're not thinking it through in any way, then yeah, you're probably a person who throughout their life has said, wow, I don't know how this happened. Again, there are plenty of times where you think it through and you think you have all of the pieces, you think you have all of the plans, you think you have everything laid out, and you look back and go, wow, I really don't know how this happened. I thought I had thought of everything. That was a curveball. Life, right? I mean, shit happens. We can't plan for everything, but you have to stop and look at the path you took. And when we stop and look at the path that we take, we do gain a better understanding of maybe we're making some impulsive decisions. Maybe we're not actually thinking things all the way through. Or maybe you think you're thinking it through, but you're only looking at it through your lens. We're not thinking about how it'll affect our family, our friends, our work, our children, our loved one, whatever it is. We have to really think it all the way through and look at each path. And sometimes that takes patience. It takes you the thought process of taking that beat. Okay, let me stop for a minute. Like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, let me think this through. I'm going to take just a moment. And sometimes we may need time for that. We may need a day. We may need a few hours. We may need a few moments, whatever it is that it takes you to think it all the way through as much as you can with the knowledge that you have. That's how we can stop those impulsive behaviors, which can lead to a lot better outcomes in a lot of different situations. One of the other things that we recognize as being a level of immaturity, and some people may give me pushback on this, but hear me out. Perfectionism. An obsession with perfectionism really can be pretty detrimental to life. It can also be a sign of some other mental health struggles like anxiety, OCD disorders, ADHD has a lot of perfectionism in it. Trauma, there's a lot of perfection that comes with trauma because maybe you always got in trouble for not getting anything right. So now you want to get everything right. And it leads to stress. It leads to procrastination. And sometimes that procrastination leads to the point of paralysis. I struggle with anxiety. I've talked about that before. I also struggle with ADHD some. I kind of get the paralysis side of it where when I know I have a lot of things to do, I get nothing done because I want to get them all right. I want to do them all to completion and I do nothing. And before we went on the cruise, I had packing paralysis. I don't know what was wrong with me. I'm usually pretty good about it. I usually get everything organized. And I mean, I may be rearranging the night before, but I'm usually pretty good about having my pile and getting things together and And I overpack a little, but not a lot. I had packing paralysis. I was literally sitting in my floor with my suitcase and piles of clothes around me in tears because I couldn't get my shit together. I don't even know why. Like, I don't know what was happening. And this was before even the drama happened. Like, I don't know what was going on with me. I was stressed out. I was overwhelmed, and it was overwhelming me, and I just couldn't get it together. And so I just super overpacked, and it was terrible, but it was fine. I had more than enough that I needed. I had a great time. After I got it loaded, I was like, hell, there's nothing I can do about it now. Here we go. Sometimes it leads to those things, but that comes from a different place than the immaturity. Sometimes the immaturity leads to that perfectionism. And when we're talking about it being the emotional immaturity or something we need to grow and learn on, it usually comes from a place of fear or judgment or rejection. We don't do things, we want things to be perfect because we're afraid of what people might think of us. We're afraid of how they're going to respond to us. We're afraid of judgment. We're afraid of all of those things, where even though people's opinions do still affect me sometimes, and I do care, even though it doesn't always seem like it, I do care what people think of me and how I'm received in the world, because I want to be received as a good person, as someone who has respect for others, all of those things. But there comes a time where you just have to stop caring what some random person is going to think of you. It is a nice level of self-worth. I'm not saying I don't get insecure. Obviously, I'm human. We have those moments. We all have those times. But if we're looking for perfection to get acceptance, if we're looking for perfection for some of these other external validation things, like I said earlier, it can be a sign that we, again, just need to work on that self-worth and your self-value. We're all human, and perfection is a made-up concept. Nothing is ever perfect. But what we strive for is progress. Progress, not perfection. In all of this, being mindful, being present is the key. Like, taking time to look at ourselves, recognize our behaviors. What are we doing? Are we deflecting? Are we defending? Are we using this to quote unquote protect ourselves? Some of these behaviors. Don't beat yourself up about it, but grow. If you keep doing it, and that's how you keep living your life, where you are the victim of your life and everything is someone else's fault, and you're having these big responses and you're having these big reactions and you're crying to get out of things or whatever it is, work on yourself, because that's no fun for anyone. And it's not fun for you, because I know the internal struggle of living like that. Deal with what you need to deal with. Seek out a therapist, a mentor, someone who can help you, a coach, whatever it is. We're not going to beat ourselves up about it, but we're going to grow through it. We're going to accept that somewhere along the way, those behaviors probably helped you. They probably were a way to protect ourselves. You may have established them out of necessity to survive a bad situation. You may have needed it in your family. You may have needed it in a relationship. It's time to get rid of behaviors that don't serve you. Get rid of those behaviors that aren't helping you be a better version of yourself, to grow and to find happiness and to be okay with just being okay. You're not going to be perfect, but you can be okay, and you can just keep it moving and have a great time and feel confident in yourself. Know that if I get knocked down or if someone hurts my feelings, that's okay, because I know that I am deserving. I know that I am loved. I know that I have value, and I know tomorrow is another day. And if something bothered me today, it doesn't have to bother me tomorrow. And it's not easy to work through those things, but it is so worth it in the long run. It's worth it to understand you have value and to understand that you are worthy, and you don't need other people to tell you that. And I want everyone to find that. I want you to understand, just hear my words right now. You have value. You are worthy. Someone loves you. You may not even know who it is, but you are loved. And if there's not someone externally that loves you, then love yourself. Love some part of yourself. And the more you start loving the parts of yourself, you start learning that that's all you need. And when you can love yourself, other people can love you. Just like RuPaul says, if you can't love yourself, how the hell you gonna love somebody else? Like you, whatever the quote is. I know I didn't get it exactly right, but you get the point. If we don't have love for ourselves, other people aren't going to have love for us either. So we need to love ourselves, and we need to be okay with our flaws, to be okay with the fact you may be a little insecure, to be okay with the fact that you maybe need some reassurance every now and then. And you can ask for that. Listen, I need you to tell me that I'm okay. I need someone to validate me right now. And your friend group, your family, your loved ones, your partner will be like, oh my God, okay, you're great. I love you. You're wonderful. We got this. And that may be all you need. Sometimes we do need a little bit from the outside, but it shouldn't all come from there. You know, I saw a quote the other day and it just really stuck with me. And it said something like, we can't control every curveball that life throws our way, but we have all the power in how we swing back. And that's where we do have the control, is how we swing back. How do you react? Are you overreacting? Is it a valid response? Are we being mindful? Are we letting something get to us that we shouldn't? Is it really that big of a deal? Like, what in life is important? When you go through struggles and you go through hard times, sometimes you recognize how big things are and how little things are. The little things, when you learn to just let them roll and be like, you know what? It is what it is. I'm going to keep it moving. Then you can find joy in the bigger things, and you can find joy in yourself. That's it. That's the episode. I want everyone to work on just how they are taking their swings and what you're actually spending the energy to swing on. It takes a lot of energy to swing, but swing away. Have fun. Be out there. Love yourself. And, you know, grow a little. That's where we are. See you next week. For my producer, Jay Lindley, I'm Leslie Ross. Thank you all for joining us. Please send any questions or comments through the website, heytherapist.com, or email help@heytherapist.com. They may be featured on the show anonymously. Hey Therapist is an SEOK radio production and is for your entertainment purposes only. Thank you for joining us. Make good choices.